Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Outside In. I'm your host, Stephen Rose. When I turned 50, I decided it was time for me to learn how to play bass. Now, I've always loved music, but I thought, this is something I really want to do. And what I've learned is I'm not very good at it, but when I get brain fog, when I'm having a hard time concentrating, by going in and getting my fingers to do what I want them to do is difficult, but it opens up the whole other side of my brain, and I'm able to come back and do that. And I love playing music, and I love playing music for people, because music is an incredibly powerful catalyst for culture. Music ties us, people, places, and moments to it in time. Take a moment, close your eyes, and think about Jimi Hendrix's guitar burning at the Monterey Pop Festival, or the first time you heard Aretha Franklin sing Respect. Maybe it was the first time that you heard about a young senator from Illinois named Barack Obama. But that emotion, that feeling that you have, it transcends that. Now, here's the key. You have to put all that into words. And that's where our guest today comes in. Words that educate, inspire, and perhaps even create change. As the co-founder, father, and publisher of Rolling Stone magazine, Jann Wenner worked to give words to those moments, to give everybody a front row seat so that they could understand the attitudes and embrace the world of music and culture and politics. Please welcome my guest, Mr. Jann Wenner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well said.
I appreciate that, especially coming from you.
In the beginning, we felt that rock and roll was imbued with a special spirit and a special spirituality and a special social conscience. And music, we used the John Sebastian Love and Spoonful phrase,
right?
The magic that can set you free. And I still believe that is the case. And part of it is as you just laid out, is it touches the soul in a way that no other art form can. It's something that it's so physical. It expresses something that's inexpressible.
I agree. And from some of the happiest moments in our lives to some of the moments when we're at our lowest and grieving, it's often the music and that memory that brings the color to that moment.
And it lifts you up in the worst of times.
It does.
And it consoles you in the worst of times. And it can encapsulate and memorialize the happiest of times.
Yeah. Let's chat.
That greatest feeling of all, love, you know.
Oh, love is at the core of all music and art and painting and sculpture, and it brings it all together. I want to talk about some interesting things in the book. I love the book, by the way.
Thank you.
I thought putting John Lennon on your first cover, and I know it was also a photograph that was affordable and that you could use, but I know you're a huge fan of John Lennon's. Why pick John for the first cover, and especially that picture of him in the military helmet and all that from the movie that he did?
Well, speaking about John Lennon then, in my relation then, I was just a big fan, and I was, of course, you're supposed to pick which Beatle you were the fan of. Right. I was a John Lennon fan. He's the intellectual and smart and fast-witted one. But the picture was really just one of about 24 that were available, PR pictures of various people or things, whatever, I can't remember, that we had. We couldn't afford to assign a photographer or something ridiculous like that. And there was that picture of him of his penetrating look, wearing a helmet from Private Gripweed in an anti-war movie called How When the War. Right. It was just fortuitous, really. It turned out to be a combination of not only the preeminent figure, probably of rock and roll, the quintessential rock and roller of those times and our times, and our concerns with movies and politics, and there it was. And then John Lennon went on to, in his many appearances in the magazine, especially on the cover, to be instrumental, to the building of real Rolling Stone's success of Rolling Stone.
And at its core, you're bringing politics and culture and music together,
right? And
it would so set the tone. So it takes a while to get that to get the first issue out, but you only have a few weeks to get your second issue out. So how does that change the whole editorial process? You can't have your hands in every single article and process. So what did you let go of? What did you focus in on? How do you change when you go from 3 months to 2 weeks?
Well, you have to scramble. Anything goes. The second issue really the cover on it was Tina Turner, because Ralph and I had gone to the Tina Turner show the week before and had taken some pictures, and I wrote a review of it. So that's Tina Turner, another fortuitous choice. And then the news story was it happened that Ralph had been tipped and given all the information about Dylan's making John Wesley Harding, which was the first Dylan record in some years. So we had that exclusive. But, you know, it was what Ralph called, when you're down to seeds and stems, this is what you do.
That is a good reference for those of you who live in a state where marijuana is legal. You're very familiar with what we're talking about. But
no,
it's
those
a great,
people
it's a great thing.
They don't have to deal with seeds and stems anymore. They all come packaged, processed, cleaned, you know.
It takes all the fun out of it.
Sticks, yeah.
So music, politics, and culture, which we said affect each other. But how do you keep a balance? I mean, you're looking at Altamont, the Vietnam War era. How do you not get one thing sort of overtaking the other? How do you get that balance of culture, music, and politics in a time when politics was driving so much of that?
Well, we didn't start off with a heavy component of politics. So we were doing things like a survey of all of our troops in Vietnam and what their drug use was at the time. The story that ultimately became Apocalypse Now. And other things I forget offhand. But you know, you have to, on the one hand, make sure that you're satisfying, you know, readers' appetites for a little of music, a little of everything, you know. And you can't do it too methodically at the beginning, but what I discovered, looking back on it, was that if you just follow the news, you know, of what's important, if there's a record out that week that's super important, or some big movie or something, you kind of follow what's in the public interest, or people's interest, and you end up with something very timely and compelling from that.
It's almost like the tide. You sort of have to go with it if you don't fight it.
Now you go with the flow, and the flow is really what people are interested in, you know, what is topical, what is moving their world that week.
Yeah. Speaking of moving the world, it was interesting because Rolling Stone was an outspoken advocate and one of the first magazines to come out for gun control, for gay rights, one of the first magazines to talk about AIDS, immigration, and climate change. We're still having these exact same conversations today. There's been no change. How does that make you feel that we haven't progressed on any of these?
Well, respectfully, I disagree with what you're saying.
Okay.
First of all, I would like to disclaim the fact that we were the discoverers or were the unique people behind any of these issues in these crusades. We didn't come up with gun control.
No.
But what you enumerated were the concerns of the magazine that we were passionate about over a long, long period of time. And I think what you have to understand is, first off, change in this kind of society of this size, of this bureaucracy, does not happen overnight. It's a long process. Trying to end the war in Vietnam was a long process. So in these issues that you've mentioned, on the contrary, I think a lot has changed. I think a tremendous amount has changed. You know, I would be happy to take some of the credit for pushing along and moving it and motivating people and investigating the particulars of a particular issue. So some move along quick, some move along slowly. But let's take them, for example. A later crusade was gun control.
Right.
One of the most intractable issues in society. Right. But we are now at a point, due to all these killings, where gun control is, you know, now a major part of the Democratic Party platform. The public's in front of it, and already starting to crumble. You know, and it's going to take a while because they're super well financed, and there's a lot of chicken shit politicians taking their money. Women's rights, complete change.
Yeah.
Complete. That's you know, is it 100%
no.
equality? No, but it's like completely different than it used to be. You know, when I grew up, it was your housewives on television, men and women slept in separate beds, on and on. It was ridiculous. Gay rights, for example. When I grew up in the 50s, people were sent to jail for it. Yeah. Now, can you imagine that in this day and age? Throwing people in jail for private sexual practices? Astounding. And like even as late as the 80s, or I forget the exact, or early 90s, the idea that marriage between two men would be legal and acceptable in most places is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't, so all these things. Now, let me just skip ahead on all the rest of them. Talking about climate change are the most intractable and then we've been writing about this since 1970 and done a huge amount of work and a huge amount of coverage. It is not susceptible to it's not like the other, it's not a cultural change. It's not a change of consciousness like we've talked about in these other issues. This is about dealing with the greediest forces on earth.
Yeah.
The people who own oil companies and the banks that finance them and the hedge funds. And they're the most powerful people on earth. And they've got trillions of dollars invested. And it's a fight against those people. And they're, again, these chicken shit politicians. And that's not up to this generation. We've done our fight, but it's a bigger fight. It's bigger than, and it's going to take the next generation. It's going to take our successor generation too.
Well, it's great to see people like Greta Thunberg and Malala Yousafzai and these. It gives me hope seeing that next generation stand forward and do what you did back in the 60s, saying this is wrong and we're going to put word to power.
So we're still on it, and we now need the next generation. And I mean, people, I would say I'm hopeful, except the discouraging facts of physics and science there's a lot of inevitable processes at work here. And the surreal race is on, and that's the most depressing aspect of it.
Understood. October 11th is National Coming Out Day. I thought this was especially interesting, taking a look at your book, because we at Microsoft, we very much strive towards inclusivity and diversity. You were married, 3 kids, came out, decided, I want my life to go in a different direction. You had found somebody you fell in love with, still went ahead and, were a great dad, had 3 more kids. What would you say to someone who's struggling with that thought, do I come out? How do I do it? Should I? Perception. What would you say to somebody if they came to you, you were sitting in a coffee shop and said, should I do it?
Well, I'd say do it. Absolutely. I mean, I was in a lucky circumstance that there was a lot of support. It was in a day and age where it was okay, and I was in a city where it's okay, in a cultural environment where it was okay. And, an understanding wife and on and on. And I must say, by my experience, I didn't lose one friend, upset one thing that was going on. There was just this rough divorce part. That's typical of anything. But, presumably, you live in a part of the country where you can find support, where there's support. And I think that's in most parts of the country. I don't think too many kids are committing suicide over despair over it anymore. We did a story some years ago called To Be Young and Gay, and it was about kids who lived in small towns and trying to come out, and kind of the hostility they met and the lack of support, and people tried to help, and their struggles. And I think probably those struggles still go on, but most of the country lives in big cities, and so what do you got to lose? You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to lose your friends. You're not going to lose your folks. People are educated these days. I don't think those struggles still exist in the same way. There's plenty of role models. There's plenty of people to talk to. Just do it.
And if you do lose those friends, you probably want to reevaluate that friendship.
And I think you've discovered that most of your friends probably knew you were gay to begin with. I don't know. If they're good friends, it doesn't matter. And you don't want those friends. You say you don't want those kind of people anyway in your life. But I think, I'm sure there's individual struggles that are tough in individual family situations, and maybe in particular types of churches or particular environments. Good luck to you and God bless you. Just get out of those places. Move to the big city or something. But all other things being equal, it's no big deal.
Excellent. Al Gore, and I want to get this right, I'm quoting this from your book, "What politics has become requires tolerance for frivolity, artifice, and nonsense that I find I personally have in short supply." You celebrated your 75th birthday a little while ago. What are you in short supply of?
Years. I'm trying to work on, I would say I was in general in short supply of patience. And I'm trying to learn more and more patience now, because for a bunch of reasons, it's really good. I don't feel too much in short supply of much, love, money. What have you got? Kids? I've got 6 of them. Great books I've written. I've got one of those. And no, I'm a very happy person, sitting back with the kids and, still playing a role in things, and certainly enjoyed writing the book and going on this kind of tour of it. It feels kind of like a victory lap, People are loving what we did now, instead of all the complaining I used to get all the time. You didn't cover this, give a bad review to this, how could you say this,
Right. You've had a front row seat to rock and roll history. You've been there from Jimi Hendrix on at those really kind of key moments You were there, front row seat. I mean, I remember reading how you were sitting with Glynis Johns and Mick Jagger the day after Bobby Kennedy was shot. And they play Sympathy for the Devil, and there's that line, who killed the Kennedys? After all, it was you and me. How does that make you feel in a moment like that? That has to just kind of hit you going, wow, that's really powerful and timely and a unique way to sort of look at things.
It was after Bobby Kennedy was shot.
Yeah, no, it was, just after.
Having a front row seat, I had a front row seat at Monterey Pop Festival.
Yeah.
Okay, and watched Jimi Hendrix burn his guitar, and Pete Townsend smash his, and Janis Joplin make her kind of national debut there, and all the other wonderful things that happened there. But I've just seen many extraordinary shows and many extraordinary performances, and being able to maybe participate in it in a little extra way because I know the people playing or know what they're going to do. I'd just been backstage, feeling a part of it, and understand. The more you understand it, the more you're going to like it. But one of the greatest things I ever did was I produced a 2-night concert at Madison Square Garden, the 25th anniversary of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it had Bono, it had the U2, it had Mick, it had Bruce, it had Stevie Wonder, it had Aretha Franklin, Jeff Beck, Sting, Simon & Garfunkel, Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. You can check it out. It's online.
They were among the greatest performances ever by some of these groups, and so because of the uniqueness of them playing in front of all their peers.
Yeah.
It should have been backstage. That scene where everybody was lifting their game, wanting to impress. The collaborations that were involved, and just seeing some of these things. I felt like the roof of Madison Square Garden was kind of lifting off during some of these things. I could see it, lifting up in the air. It was unbelievable.
You're now a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What was that like to get inducted, to stand on that stage with so many of these people who you know and appreciate, and the work they've done has changed the world and has changed people? What is it like to stand on that stage?
Well, at first I was very blasé about it, having inducted, I don't know what year it was, I was the 5th or 17th or whatever. And so I was kind of blasé about it. And I'd watch all these people all the time say, this is one of the greatest moments of my life, thinking, what about the birth of your child?
Right.
But once you're there and it starts happening that evening, and you understand that there's all these people that are your peers, or people you admire, and they're there to celebrate, and it's a serious thing, and it really gets to you. It's very special. And then I was very lucky. I was inducted by Ahmet Ertegun and Mick Jagger did it together. And so Ahmet was one of my greatest heroes and mentors. And Mick, can I tell you about Mick? To be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Mick Jagger is extraordinarily special.
Yeah, to say, this is my friend, and to have him say truly loving things about you.
Generally speaking.
That's awesome. Generally speaking,
no,
yes.
he was lovely. He was very funny, though. He said, Jann Wenner is the inventor of the very long-form interview. Before, all we had to do was talk about what colors we liked and what we were looking for in a girl. Now you have to discuss what dope you take and what do you think about the war in Vietnam. Something that goes on.
Sure. Is there a person or an event that has had a lasting impact on you? I have some ideas on what you might say here, but that when you look back on, that was a definitive moment in my life that changed my perspective on something.
Well, after Rolling Stone, it's hard to say. There's so many different people I met, outstanding leaders, and like McGovern, Al Gore, and something like that. Every outstanding musician, and writer, and just one thing after the other. Before Rolling Stone, I think the seminal moment for me was I was a sophomore at Berkeley, and walking across the campus one day, and a big demonstration was taking place in front of the main administration building, and 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 students. This is the beginning of student protest in Berkeley, and on the steps of the hall, and it was a sit-out, and they were surrounding a police car which had a kid in it. In fact, the guy who invented the slogan, never trust anybody over 30, was in that car. But they refused to go anyway. So that was what it was about. So there's Joan Baez, and I stop and I watch, and she's singing With God on Our Side. And at that moment, and listening to those lyrics by Bob Dylan, I just thought, it was an epiphany to me. So that's what it's about. That's what we that is exactly what's happening. That is the hypocrisy. And I have to do something about it. I have to participate in somehow to make this better, to change that. And it was no longer possible for me then to be a part of this kind of more social, preppy world, normal world I was part of, but I had to get involved. I had been political all my life and raised, but this was my personal epiphany at that moment.
Wow. That's amazing. In 1994, I love this in the book, after the death of Kurt Cobain, your staff came to you and said, Kurt is this generation's John Lennon. And that really struck you. You said this was an interesting thought and worth serious discussion. It just was like, Name another time when your staff challenged you on a position that you had where you had to kind of take a step back.
Well, that Cobain thing wasn't so much a challenge. It was just, I was going to go, obviously you were going to put him on a car. There was no discussion about it. The idea that he was this generation's John Lennon, which musically speaking is ludicrous. The body of work, they're totally different things. But this symbolism and the importance of this figure to this generation, that was worth serious discussion. And so it wasn't a challenge, it's just an idea. The big challenge, I think, there are two big challenges in the early 80s. When we moved to New York, all of a sudden punk rock emerged.
Right.
And I didn't care for it. Let's be honest. I don't want to say anything to upset anybody. So it was not my personal cup of tea. But I didn't want to put the Sex Pistols on the cover, but the staff mounted a plea and not a protest, but a case for it. And they were right. It was new. It's in a tradition of music. People are talking about it. Important to look at it culturally. So we did it, of course. And, over whatever my personal music preferences are, which should not be determinative, particularly as you get older. The other big one was disco. The staff hated disco. It's not that I like disco. It's just, I liked it. Disco's totally legitimate. It's great for me. What was rock and roll about? Dancing,
Right.
This is dance music, more dance music. And I don't know why, it's a kind of a cultural thing, prejudice against it. And I said, nah, we're putting Donna Summers on the cover. Don't talk to me. And we did. And of course, it was important. She's great. She's in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And she brought funk and soul and disco together, much the way that the Rolling Stones and Zeppelin took blues and evolved it and moved it forward, and jazz influences as we start to get into that. When you look at bands like The Police, there's that reggae jazz influence, so it's always been taking from those different cultures. You got a lot of flack for quite a while, and again, you address this in the book about not putting rap artists immediately on the cover, which you did do.
We did do.
Yeah. And that, again, even though it's not your cup of tea, there was that cultural significance in that.
Absolutely.
And you did do that.
And there was never any doubt or question or argument in the office about it at all. I think there's just haters around, and you can't deal with haters. The facts are we covered black music, rap music better than any other magazine or publication or medium in the country, even better than things like, what were the things, Vibe and...
There's Vibe, Spin, and all those, yeah.
The Source, but even better than the actual magazines. So the rap, we had the best interviews, the best covers, and long before and going back to our very beginning, rock and roll came from black music. We are very aware of that, very respectful, and we're frankly big fans of R&B and Motown. That's my favorite kind of music anyway. And the blues, we've been covering from day one and covers since day one. You know, so I shrug it off.
The work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Our CEO talks about failing fast. And, if you're going to make a mistake, that's fine. Fail fast, learn from it, move on. Is there an interview or someone that you met and there was a question that later you're like, that's the question I should have asked?
No. Not that you always... Yeah, there's a question, but not the question. There's a bunch of questions. I could have followed up. I should have, because you were under time constraints or whatever, and things are going well. But nothing I felt where I had left out something that was really important or, a critical piece. No, that was all good. Speaking of your CEO, Paul Allen was a friend of mine, and he played guitar, and he could play note for note to Jimi Hendrix. National anthem version.
Wow.
He was a very, very good guitar player.
That's amazing. I did not know that. Interesting. I have some true-false questions for you. Linda Eastman was a Rolling Stone photographer, and you helped pave the way for her to meet Paul McCartney and eventually get married.
Very true. She asked me if she could go to England on assignment to cover the Beatles, and I said, why? We don't really need more Beatles studies because I want to meet Paul. I said, okay, go.
There you go. Charles Manson once wrote and asked for a free subscription to Rolling Stone magazine.
He did. He in jail, and I had that. I kept that letter, and then we finally put it up on a display at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's like one of the most popular exhibits there. You know, so weird. He's a strange dude, but
yes, he is. And you were one of the people who was really instrumental in getting Annie Leibovitz her start.
Well, Annie just walked into our offices unknown. She's 21 years old. She's an art student at the San Francisco Art Student. She brought over a portfolio of pictures she had been taking. She was not a photographer. She was studying painting, but she had been taking pictures on the side. And our art director at the time, I didn't mean it, looked at them and said, well, I'll take these 10 pictures in your profile and we'll just leave them here so maybe we can do something with them. And sure enough, like within a month and a half later, one ended up on the cover. It was a picture she had taken it during the Kent State demonstrations. And then we started giving her assignments. And she got better and better, and then she would do anything we asked her to do, travel anywhere, and within, a year of her being there or less, she's coming with me to New York to shoot John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
In that infamous cover, yeah.
No, that was years later.
Oh, the bed cover?
This was in 70 when I was doing the Lennon Remember interviews with him. 10 years later, it's that other cover.
Right.
But she was a true treasure. Nobody would understand or know then what was in her and the talent and the light in that person.
Wow.
I mean, she's unparalleled today.
Voltaire said, to the living we owe respect, but to the dead we owe only the truth. Now, as an editor, I want you to give me one sentence on each of these people. And I know that will be difficult, but I thought as an editor, if anybody can do it, you can. So I'm going to say John Lennon first.
Extraordinarily talented, genius, somewhat bitter, man.
Okay. Jerry Garcia.
Lovely, easygoing, relaxed, generous to everybody.
Jackie Onassis.
Delight. The sun comes out when she's in with you.
I had no idea until I read the book about your relationship with her and what great friends you were. And that was such a wonderful surprise. And there's so much warmth when you talk about her. It comes off of the page in a way that is just electric. And I encourage folks to check that part out because I was like, wow, you can just feel the warmth and the love as you talk about her. And it's a really beautiful portrait.
If you take away all her legend and all that stuff, which is very hard, was just a wonderful person. Fun to be with. Made you come alive, just anyway.
The smile on your face, I think, says it all. Jimi Hendrix.
Well, I didn't know him. I only had one encounter in person with him where we sat around in a motel room in San Francisco in '67 smoking dope. And I was trying to interview him, but we just kept getting stoner and stoner. I had no idea where we were going with this thing and had the tapes transcribed. And I finally figured out how to put it together. But he seemed like a good soul. Everybody loved him.
Yeah. Wow. One of my personal heroes, Hunter S. Thompson.
Well, Hunter was one of my closest and dearest friends of all times. And I wrote in the book, I said, wherever he ends up, I'd like to be in that same, when I go, I'd like to be there with him. And to be with him was, for anybody who was with him, you felt you were coming to the closest to the edge of danger and excitement you were ever going to come in your life. This was it. Whether you're with him driving a car and he's about ready to do a huge U-turn in the middle of a snowbank at 80 miles an hour or whatever. All kinds of adventures. But Hunter was funny and witty, and we shared pretty much the same point of view on everything in politics. And I loved him dearly, and I know he loved me. We were not just friends, but also, we worked together as editor and writer brilliantly. And I was terribly, terribly sad when he went. But he was a gentleman, polite. He was not violent. He didn't hurt people. He's a decent human being for all the craziness I talked about. And the craziness was what other people remember, which was so much fun. I just remember a boon companion. And I wrote in my book, I said, when I die, I would be happy to end up wherever he went.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Hunter S. Thompson. I read Hell's Angels when I was young, and for those who are not familiar, he invented gonzo journalism, the idea that you don't just write about something from the outside, you get in there, you do it, you are part of that story, and you understand those inner workings, the emotion, and what brings those things together, and then you take a step back and you write it and report it and talk about it from this position. And no one had really done that, from cycling events and sporting events to, the Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail and Las Vegas and Hell's Angels and all this. It was such a unique way of doing journalism that it took somebody who was this larger-than-life person to be able to do it.
I had more fun with Hunter than I've ever had in my life with anybody.
And he will be missed.
Yes.
My final question to you. You are good friends with Bruce Springsteen, and you were at his birthday party a little while ago, and you say you gave him a gift in the book, but you don't say what it was. And I'm wondering, what do you give the boss for his 70th birthday?
Well, we have one of our great illustrators. I had him do a painting of Bruce standing on stage with the number 70 behind him. Those theater lights that go in, because he was on Broadway at that time. So just a portrait of him with the 70 and bright lights on Broadway.
But it's personal. You know him, and it's a gift from the heart, and that's what matters. Jann Wenner, this has been an amazing treat. I want to thank you very much for taking time and for joining us today. And for everybody else, the book is Like a Rolling Stone. We encourage you to check it out. Any final words on the book?
It's pretty good, and it's getting good reception. I'm very proud of it. And it's long, but it's a fast read.
It is, and there's great pictures in it.
And great fun. It's got a lot of laughs.
It does. Thank you so much.
And it's serious.
It is serious.
And you'll support me.
Absolutely will. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.